What is your never interrupt an enemy while they are making a mistake moment? I was doing a mortgage for a French guy in Miami Beach that had a French realtor. Even though both were completely fluent in English, she frequently did asides in French, having no idea I spoke the language. When they settled on a property and we were riding the elevator down from the condo, she told him that, "Look, these guys are scumbags, and they're going to screw you over, and I have a much better person that you can work with," even though the way foreign investment works is identical throughout the state. Towards the end of the ride, I say to the guy in fluent French that we would be happy to compare our proposal with whatever her people could come up with, and it's his choice, but certainly we would like to work with him on this and any future investments. He starts laughing his ass off, and she was completely mortified. He went with us and fired her as his agent, on the spot. When a coworker who I hated got fired a few weeks after I decided to stop fixing his mistakes even if it impacted a client. Guy stole a presentation from me. This is 25 years ago. We hated each other. When he started presenting, I realized I had made a huge error. Didn't say anything. Let him get through it. Asked him about the error. He couldn't answer. This was in front of the chief operations officer. Got fired, not for just that, he was an overall douche. This was before everyone was on PCs, had one printer in one room. I bet he thinks you set him up. Not my story. But several years ago, my older brother was fighting for custody of his son with his ex-wife. As the first custody hearing date approached, they were exchanging pleasantries over text, and my brother ended up saying something along the lines of, "I'm not continuing this conversation. I will see you on the 15th inch." The ex-wife told him, "The hearing is on the 25th, dumbass." So of course, instead of correcting her, my brother just allowed her to keep thinking it was the wrong date, and she missed the first hearing entirely. It became the first of many mistakes she made in the court system that eventually led to my brother and the woman who is now his second wife winning full custody of his son. Shit, I'd frame a picture of those two texts and send it to her on the anniversary of their divorce. At my current job, part of my duties is to do trailer audits, make sure people are loading safely, and I was training a new member for the position to do the job. After a few weeks, it turns out that the other person wasn't doing any aspects of the job. Instead, they were just mingling like it was a cocktail party. When asked why they weren't doing anything, they say it was because they were never trained. Well, turns out that due to past complaints about this particular person, management put them on a PIP, that if they got any type of training, they were to have a piece of paper documenting what kind of training it was, who trained them, and management sign off, with all parties' signatures. When they pulled the file that said they were indeed trained in all duties of the job, they just sat there silent and was fired. They were fired because they pulled the same stunt in every department of the building, and mine was their last chance. Roommate's ex abandons their vehicle in front of my house. I tell them to please move it or I will have it towed. Vehicle suddenly has 2 flat tires. Ex files police report claiming my roommate and I had slashed their tires. Waited until X made their statement to the police about how we had slashed their tires and that is why they couldn't move his vehicle, and filed a claim against us in small claims court. Provided police and the court copies of my and our neighbor's door cam footage showing the X arriving in the middle of the night to slash their own tires. Cherry on top, X shows up in court wearing the same shirt as in the videos. I was accused by a neighbor of reversing out my drive and hitting his car. He gave me the date and time I had allegedly done it, and pointed to a small scrape on my car that supposedly matched perfectly the location of the dent on his. This was 7 weeks after the alleged event, by the way. I said it wasn't me but told him to contact his insurance, and we'd see what they said. Few weeks later I get a letter from my insurance asking what had happened, to which I responded with the date I had bought my car, and updated my insurance, 2 weeks after the supposed bump. He never spoke to me again, but I used to give him a cheery wave every time I saw him glowering at his window. During my very long and exhausting divorce, my ex-husband kept insisting he was ready to settle. We would schedule a conference with my lawyer and I, and then push papers around the table for 2 hours. He would just argue over petty details rather than actually discuss anything. This happened a few times. I was incredibly frustrated because I genuinely walked into this wanting to compromise so it would be over quickly. But that was never an option. Note that I hired a lawyer, and he did not. He was convinced he could do it on his own better. So after a few rounds of this, I got the impression that he was trying to waste my money until I could no longer retain my lawyer, and then he thought he would have the upper hand. I made less than half of what he did at the time, and my lawyer's retainer fee wiped out my entire savings, so it was a very real concern. My suspicions were confirmed when one day, as we were walking out of my lawyer's office, he told me this, word for word, while chuckling. I passed this on to my lawyer, who actually cackled and told me, "Let him." It was then that I learned that we were 6 months out from being married 10 years, and at that point, I would be entitled to a sizable part of his pension upon retirement. She let him play his games for 6 more months without saying a word, and then finally took our case before a judge 5 days after our 10-year anniversary. Not only did I get part of his pension, but she also got the judge to order him to pay almost all of my lawyer's fees. The beauty of it was that it 100% his fault for playing games. I'm working on a job site, and the architect is there one day. I've been given some light fixtures for the sconces in a leasing office lobby. The fixtures are meant to be hung from a ceiling, they can't be installed on a wall. I attempt to convey this to the architect, but he brushes me off and just tells me to follow the prints. I turn to the apprentice and say, "Well, you heard the man, put them up." A bit later, we hear the crashing of glass. The architect asks what was that? I said, "Your light fixture," as I picked up a broom and dustpan to go clean up. Should have picked up the broom and dustpan and handed them to the architect. When I was a teenager, a cousin of mine, Jenny, had a fight with her mom, Jackie. The fight was so intense that Jackie beat Jenny severely, so she called mom and dad asking for help and asked to live here for a while. At the time that sounded horrifying, but we quickly learned that Jenny was full of fucking shit. Jenny was a drama queen, loved to stir up trouble, lied constantly about basically everything, and Jackie never laid a hand on her. We had heard rumors but dismissed them and believed her. Until one incident. Mom always kept a few frozen pies in the freezer, just in case company came over. Jenny took a pie from the freezer one day, ate the entire damn thing, and when Mom came home, she got angry because those pies were for company. She asked Jenny who ate the pie, and she said, "I did." She yells for me. I come into the kitchen, she asks if I ate the pie. I said no, and get yelled at for eating the pie. Jenny then proceeds to launch into telling this overly elaborate tale about how I took the pie and ate it just to get her in trouble. She went on for like 3 minutes, and Mom just kept getting angrier and angrier at me, while I couldn't help grin like a madman. 3 minutes later, she finishes her story and I point something out. It was a coconut cream pie she ate. I despise coconut. I hate it and will never eat it. Mom knew this, and the realization hits her. Jenny gets a look of horror in her face. She got grounded for a month. The look of both of them is seared in my mind. Makes me smile when I think of it. The funny thing is, she tried it again 2 months later, this time eating a chocolate cream pie, but Mom didn't believe her. Never tell the same lie twice. Eileen Garrick. As I was being fired from a job, the district manager requested we record the conversation. He thought I was gonna be very upset, so I obliged. Then when he started to tell me why I was being fired, he started with, "You are gonna be graduating college soon, and we want to make sure we get ahead of you leaving us." I very calmly asked he send me the recording right after he said that. Then later that day I called a lawyer. I now have no student loan debt. To give context, I was able to win litigation due to breach of contract. I don't feel like the internet is the right place to go into further detail. I used to live in an apartment that had a very old lease. College students basically passed this place's lease down like inheritance until it came to us. And legally, the landlord could only increase the rent yearly by a small fraction of the current lease's rent. The exceptions to this were if the apartment was being renovated, in which case it would be her responsibility to accommodate us while renovating, or if it had been vacant for a year between leases. She knew our lease's rent was extremely low, and so wanted to get rid of us and jack up the rent on a new tenant. She sent us a letter about 2 weeks before our lease would be renewed saying she was renovating and we'd have to leave. Well, it happened my roommate was not just a college student, but a law student, and he happened to know she had to give us a lot more notice than that. So we plainly told her we weren't leaving and she'd be welcome to take us to court. Which she did. She told the judge she wanted to renovate, and the judge asked her for the new floor plan and a cost estimate of the proposed renovation. She had none of those things. When the judge asked why, she said she'd only decided to renovate a week prior. When the judge asked why she'd taken this decision after the legal deadline, 6 months' notice are required to end a lease, she said she was only renovating so she could start a new lease on the property. The judge literally facepalmed at her response, dismissed the case, and renewed our lease with no rent increase for the year, since she hadn't presented us a new one with enough delay to contest it. We were just sitting there with our mouths open, bewildered that she could have been dumb enough to say the quiet part out loud straight to the judge. Do you have a similar story? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.